But yeah, so yesterday we watched the expansion announcement for World of Warcraft, the new expansion that was leaked, Dragonflight. And last night I was feeling kind of lukewarm about it. Because I now in retrospect, I think the reason I felt so lukewarm about it was because in large part due to the presentation itself. Like, I think I was really put off by how forced and awkward and like cringe this presentation was that was so heavily scripted. And people were like forced to laugh on cue. It was hard to watch. And I think it made me perceive things a little worse than I might have in a better setting, like in a BlizzCon setting. Maybe I would have perceived things a little bit better. One thing that I had been complaining about, and I still think is kind of an issue, is that in the trailer for Dragonflight, I feel like there was a lack of conflict. Like, half of the trailer, if not more than half, is just this guy walking up the stairs and trying to turn the light on. Like, that's the majority of it. And then after that, the dragons are back. So, I mean, I think a lot of people misunderstood what I meant when I criticize a lack of conflict, right? Like, I've heard so many people say, oh, but I'm glad that there's no big bad evil guy. Like, aren't you glad that there's no big villain, like a jailer? Like, of course I'm glad there's not another jailer. I'm glad they're not going to turn my favorite character into the most hated character in the game. No more of that, please. I'm a little bit worried about Alexstrasza. Not gonna lie, I'm a little bit worried, but yeah, I strongly agree. I think that having no big bad evil guy would be the best possible path forward for WoW. Like, I think building more upon the lore of the land and the sense of adventure and exploration is the best way to go. I think it fits WoW best. Like, WoW at its best has, I think, been that. Well, excluding like Wrath, where you had the Lich King, but the Lich King was a villain from Warcraft 3. So when we're talking about WoW, World of Warcraft villains, I think it does better as more of an exploratory type adventure. Yes. I saw actually somebody respond to me on Twitter when I was talking about this, and they said that they're really glad to see no more convoluted machinations or overhyped villain arcs. And I mean, it's like, of course you're tired of that because it was executed so terribly for so many years in a row now. Like, I remember when the Sylvanas stuff started to get real tedious and real bad. I remember somebody on YouTube had said, I forget who it was, but they said, oh, you know, I'm really tired of villains with complex motives. Like, I want the bad guy to be bad because he's bad. Like, no shades of gray. And I've never been able to stop thinking about that comment because I'm like, I remember thinking that and thinking, Jesus Christ, like, what did WoW's story do to you? That you think that now? Like, maybe it's not the complex characters that are the problem. Like, I think maybe WoW is better off with no story or less story that focuses on like big baddies if they can't do that well. But what I wanted to say is that conflict doesn't have to be a big bad evil guy. It doesn't have to be that. Like, if you look at a fun, lighthearted anime or comedy, a lot of times the conflict is just the person's own awkwardness or their own stupidity. Like Hildebrand, a lot of times the conflict is about like, oh my gosh, how is he gonna screw this up, right? And so, like it can be internal forces or external forces. It can be like a spooky house. It can just be fear of the unknown. It can be like a hemorrhoid, I guess. I don't know. Like, it's just what I'm saying is it's just some kind of struggle that makes the story worth telling. Or not, or maybe not every story should be told. But in the trailer, I think like most of the tension was around like, can this guy light the beacon without dying and shattering into a million pieces? Like that was the main conflict, I guess. But I really think that would have been more compelling if we had a better idea of why it's so urgent that he lights the beacon now. Like, why does Gondor call for aid? Like, in Lord of the Rings, it's interesting to see the beacons get lit because you're like, damn, those beacons really gotta get lit. Gondor calls for aid. But that's not explained in the trailer. But in the board meeting later, in the corporate board meeting where they're explaining the expansion, they did say, I don't remember who it was, but one of them said that it's like, oh, now the elemental energy is surging and nature is healing now. So that's why, like, so everything's good on Azeroth now. So that's why we gotta protect Azeroth. It kind of feels to me like the dragons are like, well, we're done here. Bye, y'all. Like, things are fine. Oh my god, you know what? I just realized, actually, maybe it's because the players took off to the Shadowlands for a whole expansion that, like, the earth is healing. The planet can finally heal. Nature is healing. It's like, remember in the start of the pandemic with those nature is healing memes? Do you remember? Because people stopped, because the whole player base has been like an alternate dimension. I actually saw an article that gave a much more interesting reason for why they need to go back. But this is from an article, it's not from the trailer. But it said that, the dragons are still sapped of their power after defeating Deathwing, and they need to get their houses in order. Like, they need to regain their power. And that sounds awesome. Like, that's a legit conflict. Like, you want to get buff, you want to repopulate. Like, that sounds pretty good. But those problems and solutions are not shown in the trailer. So that's kind of a minor, it's really a minor gripe, and I feel like I'm being pedantic about it. I'm just saying the trailer could be better. It wasn't bad, it was fine, that's all. But I also remember Ian said that the Watcher was beckoning the dragons back in a time of urgent need. He said something like that. And so there is some kind of need. There's some kind of urgent need. So there was a really good post on this topic that I read a long time ago, but I've been thinking about it a lot in regards to the direction that WoW's story could take that I think would be ideal. Let me see. I actually saved it so I could show it to you because I think it makes some really good points, and I think it's right for what WoW could be to differentiate it from other MMOs and play into WoW's strengths, right? Okay, so you do not need a big bad evil guy. So this is actually from a D&D, like a DM academy, like learning how to be a better DM for people that play D&D. But it has some points that are very relevant, I think, to WoW's story. And when I read it, you'll understand what I mean. Not gonna read all of it. But basically, you don't need a single omnipresent big bad evil guy to drive the narrative. You, like, stop with a massive overarching story and the big bad evil guy. You don't always have to do that. You can think about your campaign as a series of TV show episodes, each with its own situation and protagonists. As the character's renown grows, it's actually they go from local villagers seeking help with relatively small problems to world leaders or gods needing help with massive problems. Campaigns like this are good for a lot of reasons. And when I talk about campaign here, I think more about like the leveling experience. You get to try more plot and adventure types. Players get more frequent story resolution. And it stops DMs from having to sometimes force things to keep their story on track. So these kind of alludes to problems that we've seen with WoW trying to like maybe do something more like what Final Fantasy does. And I don't think it's working out. I think they need to do something more like this that worked in the past. Well, when I talk in the past, it's like, I guess vanilla was the last time it felt like that. If the players really liked a mystery adventure, instead of thinking where you can fit another one in, you can just, well, that's more relevant to D&D. But these are the main points that I think really apply. Doing this will make your game feel more organic and less forced. And it doesn't mean that some boss can't work out really well and end up as a recurring big bad evil guy, but let it happen naturally. So I think that that's, for me, that's how I see WoW, how I would like to see the WoW story go. I think it would play into the strengths better that WoW does, because you're not the warrior of light in that game, you know, you're not like the big hero. You are just traveling through, really. And so I think it works better, but that's just my general hopes. And I have a little bit of hope based on what I've seen from this trailer, but that's just my general thoughts on that. The other new thing that they announced, oh, okay, the Drakthir, the new race. So my first reaction to this, if you were watching yesterday, I was like, what? I thought it was so crazy. I didn't expect it at all. That, like, a full-on dragon race with a dragon face, dragon body, dragon claws and wings. Like, I did not expect it in a million years. Like, it's kind of ballsy of them to do. Like, you can be I've been playing a lot of Divinity Original Sin 2 lately, so you can be like a red prince if you want. I do feel like it's kind of lame that this race can only be the one class. Like, because Ian said, oh, well, you have unique abilities as a dragon, and that doesn't fit for our existing classes. And I felt like that was really sounded kind of bullshit. Like, because, like, if you have hands, you can swing a sword. Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't be able to swing a sword if you have hands and thumbs, like, and can grab the sword. Like, if that magma dragon in Elden Ring can swing a sword at me, I'm pretty sure this guy can swing a sword. Like, oh, imagine if you could be a warrior, like a Drakthir warrior, and you can do a tail swipe, and you can breathe fire. It's like WoW Dragon rules, is you can't come at it from the back, you can't come out of the front. Some PvP people have to just come at you from the side. I think at first I was really unsure about the fact that it's a race tied to that exclusive class, because I'm looking at it through Final Fantasy colored glasses, right? Where we can be every job on one character. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds really restrictive and horrible. But I just had to kind of think about it for a while and remember that WoW, like, I think that this actually works better with WoW's system, where you can only have one class on your character. Like, that is your identity, is that one class, because then they can build all the spell animations to work with that particular race, instead of your race using like a bunch of generic, like, spellcasting animations. Like, I think it actually sounds pretty good. After I let it sink in a little bit, and I tried to not look at it through the Final Fantasy color glasses, is what I'm trying to say. Like, they said that the cast should feel pretty weighty, and like they're tailored to that particular class. So I think it could be good. They also showed off the dragon riding feature, and this has caused quite a stir because of the fact that it very much resembles Guild Wars 2 flying. Now, I've never tried Guild Wars 2, but actually watching this video made me want to try Guild Wars 2 because, damn, like, the mount looks really cool in it, actually. Okay, let me look. Let me show you. So this is a comparison between the new dragon riding system in WoW and Guild Wars 2 Dragon. So here's Guild Wars 2. It actually looks pretty good. I was like, damn, that looks awesome. I mean, Guild Wars 1 looked better going down, but you can see it's like similar. It does the little twirlies, the little spinnies. And here they're gonna show it doing the little spinnies as well. Yeah, so you can see it's very similar. But I don't think it's bad. mean, I don't think it's like a one-to-one copy. Like, it's similar. It's pretty similar. Maybe they could have been a little bit more creative, like, but I do feel like Flight in MMOs really needs to evolve, and this feels like the natural progression. Like, the natural progression would be having a more realistic seeming mount when you're in Flight. So I really hope that Yoshi P is taking notes on this. It kind of sucks to have riding a Rathalos feel exactly the same as riding a literal chair in Final Fantasy. It would be nice to have different mounts feel like different, little different, right? But, I mean, it's normal for games to take inspiration from other games. Like, this is one of the main reasons why I want WoW to succeed. And I'm constantly, like, having hopium for WoW, and I've never once, like, tried to tear it down. Like, I've always tried to, like, hope for the best and hope that whatever the next change is, it'll be a good one. And, like, hope that this is going somewhere good. Like, I've always been, that's why I've been monitoring it for so many years. Because I think that having diversity in the genre will drive innovation, and this massively benefits you, the player. And I think this is an example of that. I mean, yeah, I feel like maybe they could have done a little bit more to make it more different. But it's still good. I mean, all MMOs need this in their game, okay? I just want it in Final Fantasy 2. So they're going back to the older way of doing the talent tree. I couldn't believe it. I actually couldn't believe it when I seen it. They're listening to people. Wow. I remember Ian said something like, "Oh, well," I think he referenced the success of Classic, and he was like, "We've seen a new generation of gamers use talent trees in Classic WoW. So we thought, I guess they can figure it out after all. I guess this was something that they can actually figure out and use." So a lot of people were saying, "Oh, well, it's just going to give you an illusion of choice. It's not going to be a real choice." But that's probably true. I still think if there's a couple of different configurations that you can do that will be decent, it will be good. And if it's not a huge pain in the ass to fiddle around with your skills, then it will be good. Like, if you can just constantly move stuff around freely and just play around with it as much as you want to, then that would be pretty good, I think. So does this mean that in all those interviews that he had with Mike, that when Mike was like, "Hey, you really need to let us just respec. Why are you making it so hard?" And he gave us all of that bullshit, that he was just like, he actually was not allowed to say anything else? Like, did he internally agree, but he was forced by the marketing department to just repeat the bullshit that they told him to repeat? But it was too late in the expansion for them to change anything, so he was just like, "Well, it's the meaningful choice." And is that what happened? Because now it seems like they actually listen. Or maybe they are just desperate at this point, and they're desperate enough to actually listen to the player. I think that's what it's come to. I think they've actually... I usually do check out the new WoW expansion at the beginning of it to see if they've learned anything since the last time. See, like, is it okay? Where are we? Where are we now? Where is the game going? And I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about it. I think that getting really hyped about it at this stage is probably not a good idea, because people know almost nothing about what the actual gameplay will be like, and once people actually see it on the PTR, then they'll have a better idea of how things will actually go. Like, given Blizzard's track record, it's really difficult for me to get, like, hyped about it. Okay, I always try to be like,